Women raise their voices in Latin America for equal rights as the world celebrates International Women's Day. U.S. President Joe Biden delivered the State of the Union address amid a tense political climate at local and international levels for his administration. And as Israel murders an average of 63 women daily in Gaza, the Palestinian Prime Minister assured that on International Women's Day, women in his country have had to live through the darkest days in history. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. The peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean commemorate International Women's Day by raising their voices for equal rights in various trade union organizations. Women from several countries in the region will honor the courage, strength, and achievements of women around the world in the face of the challenges of inequality in public and private sectors. In this sense, thousands of activists will carry out activities such as forums, marches, and rallies during the day. On the other hand, this date reminds the world of women's struggles for equality, recognition, and the effective exercise of their rights. Other regions of the world also commemorate International Women's Day. In Spain, for example, social organizations are commemorating this March the 8th in the streets of Barcelona. Feminist associations and collectives organized a series of events to vindicate equality between the genders and denounce the different types of violence against women. The Assembly 8M called to march from the 6 p.m. local time through the gardens of Gracia and walking along the Gracia Passage, passing by Ronda de Sant Pere to reach the Triumph Arch, where the mobilization is set to end. The Assembly also called for a walk under the slogan, "From our misery we make the struggle grow," to show the rejection of femicides and gender violence. In this context, the government of Argentina confirmed that public workers who adhered to the strike called for this Friday for the International Women's Day will not receive the day's salary. Manuel Adorni, spokesman for the president Javier Milei, was in charge of communicating this decision. As every March the 8th, Argentine women are preparing for a great day of mobilizations. However, in view of the onslaught undertaken by the executive against the feminist movement, this day takes on special relevance. Despite the threats that target an already impoverished sector, big demonstrations are expected all over the country from a movement that has been the forefront of women's struggle in the continent and is now severely targeted by the national government. And meanwhile, with the commitment to revitalize the functioning of the organization, the 11th Congress of the Women's Federation began this Thursday in Cuba. Nearly 323 women delegates gathered at the Convention Palace in Havana, the capital of the island, to discuss the current challenges facing the country. Teresa Amarelle Boué, member of the Political Bureau and Secretary General of the Federation, explained that the main objective of the Congress is to evaluate the results of the work of the last 5 years, in addition to honor the work developed by women in various sectors of the country. During the Congress, the work of prevention and care carried out by female social workers, volunteers in the various delegations that exist in the country, as well as the role of women who hold management positions in delegations focused mainly on young women, will be praised. In Peru, the vote to determine the removal from office of several members of the National Board of Justice moves forward. The plenary approved the constitutional accusation and disqualification for 10 years to hold office against Inés Tello, with 67 votes in favor, 23 against, and 3 abstentions. Likewise, the active voting continues in the Congress for the cases of Aldo Vázquez, Imelda Tumilian, Humberto de la Haza, María Sabela, and Guillermo Tonberry. In the morning hours during the session, the defendants exercised their right to a defense. We go now to Venezuela. The National Electoral Council invited international organizations to observe the July 28th presidential elections. The president of the electoral body, Elvis Amoroso, informed that all organizations that comply with the established regulations are welcomed to attend these elections, among which are the BRICS, the Inter-American Union of Electoral Organizations, the United Nations, the European Union, and the Carter Center. Furthermore, Amoroso reiterated that he is in permanent session in order to comply with the electoral schedule.
We inform the people of Venezuela that we have extended an invitation to the following organizations to participate as electoral observers, provided they comply with the requirements and established legal constitutional regulations. Communities of Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC, BRICS, Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Inter-American Union of Electoral Bodies, United Nations experts, African Union, European Union, Carter Center, among other invited guests.
In other news, in Colombia, the Supreme Court of Justice failed to elect the Attorney General of the nation in its fourth meeting. None of the three candidates achieved the 16 votes required for this election. The magistrates will meet again next Tuesday, March 12, to vote again. The three candidates presented by the President Gustavo Petro for the election of the Attorney General are Amelia Pérez Parra, Ángela María Buitrago, and Luz Adriana Camargo. President Petro assured that this entity is carrying out a coup d'etat against him, together with the Attorney General's office and the Prosecutor's office, agencies that with various legal subterfuges are delaying the process to elect the new authority of the Colombian Public Ministry. And the NGO Doctors Without Borders announced on Thursday that the government of Panama forced it to suspend its humanitarian activities in the Darien jungle after denouncing an increase in the number of rapes of migrants crossing the inhospitable jungle on their way to the United States. Through a statement on social network X, the organization indicated that they were forced to suspend medical activities in the Darien by the authorities of Panama and highlighted their concern about the consequences that it could bring to the migrant population. On the other hand, the Panamanian government alleges that the NGO does not have a collaboration agreement in force with the Ministry of Health to operate in the country. It should be noted that the measure was adopted days after Doctors Without Borders denounced an increase in brutal attacks and sexual violence against migrants in the jungle. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, U.S. President Joe Biden delivered the State of the Union address amid a tense political climate at local and international levels for his administration. Among the center topics of his third State of the Union speech, Biden showed a firm administration would not demonize migrants. On the other hand, he also talked about the Ukrainian crisis and referred that his nation would not back down on aid to Kiev, while he reaffirmed its commitment to NATO. U.S. President also addressed the Palestinian situation in the midst of mobilizations taking place outside the House of Representatives, calling for a ceasefire. And in this context, Biden continued his soft language policy against Israel and proposed to build a humanitarian corridor for the entry of aid to Gaza. In this sense, he assured that the solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the creation of two states. Also in this context, President Joe Biden reiterated that his administration would continue its policy of military supplies to the government of Vladimir Zelensky.
My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down.
Also, as part of Thursday's speech, the U.S. president spent time trying to deny China's growth and influence in the world, even as he acknowledged that members of his nation's political establishment recognize that the government of Beijing is on the verge of displacing the United States as an economical world leader.
I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America is falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade.
And in response to the appeal of his own people and the international community, Biden allegedly stated that the United States will establish a temporary pier to provide humanitarian aid to the Gazans.
I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day.
Israel murders an average of 63 women daily in Gaza. With the reality of this fact in front of everyone, the Palestinian Prime Minister assured on the International Women's Day that women in his country have had to live through the darkest days in history. Mohammed Stayeh, acting premier, denounced that Palestinian women arrived to this March 8th mourning their loved ones displaced and deprived of the most basic human rights. And some of them even did not arrive to this day because many were murdered. He repudiated that the tragedy occurred in view of this whole world. While celebrating women in Palestine, more than 9,000 have been murdered with impunity, and the number of displaced women has reached almost 1 million. Gazan authorities put the number of orphans as well as at 17,000 since October 7th. Humanitarian organizations in Palestine denounced that the Israeli blockade measures aggravate the famine situation in the Gaza Strip. Palestinian rights groups accuse Israel of consistently and baselessly blocking aid operations to the Gaza Strip, even as the enclave falls further into famine. The organizations urge the international community to continue pressure on Israel to allow much-needed aid into Gaza so residents can cope with the famine situation due to the shortage of essential supplies. Regarding the worsening humanitarian crisis, the UN confirmed 20 deaths due to the malnutrition and warned that dozens of civilians die in silence due to famine without reaching hospitals in Gaza. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on Friday that Russian air forces destroyed 2 bases of terrorists involved in attacks on the Syrian army positions in Idlib, northwestern Syria. In this regard, Admiral Vadim Kulit, deputy head of the Center for Reconciliation of the Warring Parties in Syria, noted that on March 5th, the Air Force carried out attacks in the area of the city of Basangul in the province of Idlib. In the meantime, the official statement added that more than 20 terrorists were killed. On the other hand, the Russian military denounced that the United States-led coalition forces violated the disarmament protocols and the Syrian airspace 4 times over the Al-Taf region with a pair of F-16s and a pair of A-10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft. In Nigeria, gunmen attacked a school in the country's northwest region Thursday morning and abducted at least 287 students. The incident marked the second mass abduction in the West African nation in less than a week. According to local authorities, the assailants surrounded the government-owned school in Kaduna State's Kuriga town just as pupils were about to start the school's day. Authorities had said earlier that more than 100 students had been taken hostage in the attacks. On the other hand, the head teacher reported that the total number of those missing after a head count is of 287. Abductions of students from schools in northern Nigeria are common and have become a source of concern since the year 2014, when extremist groups kidnapped over 200 schoolgirls in Borno State's Chibok village. Also, Russia denounced that NATO exercises in Europe create conditions for world destabilization. The Russian Security Council declared that NATO insists on designing a scenario that would allow the development of armed confrontation with Russia. The Secretariat of the Russian Council stressed that the troops of the military alliance have expanded their lines in the border zone, which represents a situation of permanent alarm. The Kremlin warned that these exercises involve the participation of some 90,000 troops from 14 countries, which poses risks to the security of the world. The United Nations Refugee Agency stated that the world is facing a humanitarian catastrophe, especially fears against women and girls. The organization estimates that there are more than 110 million people who have had to flee their homes. Of these, approximately 57 million are women and girls. Within the framework of the Flee to Leave campaign, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees released this bloody reality. 20% of displaced and refugee women and girls have been victims of sexual abuse. The World Health Organization backs up this figure with an even more serious statistic. In recent years, the situation of women and girls has worsened, and 1/3 of them have been victims of physical or sexual violence since they were young. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.